Atluru is a managing director at Draper Fisher Jurvetson and a leading venture capitalist focused on the cleantech sector. He sits on the boards of numerous emerging companies in cleantech, business and consumer services, and wireless technologies. Mr. Atluru is frequently cited in the Wall Street Journal, the San Francisco Chronicle, the Sierra Club Monthly, Silicon India, Nano Investor News, the Venture Capital Journal, and other industry and national publications. Before spending 14 years in venture capital, private equity, and leveraged finance, he taught the Solar and Wind Energy Lab and was a research assistant on the waste isolation pilot project for Sandia National Labs. Mr. Atluru also specializes in India. Because he has become so much more rich and famous, I have to associate myself by pointing out that Raj and I were actually classmates at Stanford Business School. And I'm really pleased to have you in the studio today.
Yeah,
welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for taking my interview. You know, it's actually coming up 11 years since we left school.
11 years, yeah.
It's hard to believe, isn't it? Yeah.
You look all the better. Still.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You have been a VC for since then, right? And
yeah,
9 of them
yes.
with DFJ.
That's correct.
So you have been a lot more focused and consistent than I am. I've been all over the place with my career. Now, when did clean tech become a distinct sector for venture capitalists? When did venture capitalists take a look at their investment menu and said, oh, you know what, it's time for investing in clean tech? Or was it more like, you guys said, well, we already invest in these items. They're all vegetarian. Let's classify them as vegetarian or this type.
There's been a little bit of that, but in reality, venture investing in clean tech really started with the deregulation of the gas electric utility businesses back in the mid-90s, 96. There were a handful of energy technology funds that formed, and from there they typically invested in those types of theses around distributed generation, smart grid technologies. But the mainstream definition of clean tech really didn't start until 2002.
Right.
And that's when we started really actively investing in the category. And since that time, we've seen a tremendous growth in clean tech investing.
So how do you define and categorize this sector? I'm asking because unlike some of the previous industries that venture capitalists nurtured, like semiconductor or internet or wireless, they seem to be technology based. You have these technologies and you see what applications they can be, versus clean tech seems to be more a purpose based. You want environment and green, and then under that umbrella you have as big as gigantic power, as small as, I don't know, biodegradable bags or materials, and there's mechanical, electrical, and all these different types. So how do you sort it out from a venture capitalist perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you asked 5 different VCs for a definition of clean tech, you'd come up with 6 different answers.
Yeah.
That's how broad it is. But here's one definition. It's any product, technology, or service that enables businesses or consumers to utilize resources more effectively. And that is incredibly broad by any categorization. But it includes things like energy technologies, which is, I'll go back to, it's a really broad sector and probably the most active sector in clean tech. Includes water and air emissions, which is a nascent sector. Not a lot of investment has gone into that category. Includes advanced materials and their applications within energy, for things like membranes, fuel cells, batteries, the like. And it's all the enabling technologies underneath that enable that investment thesis. What we've seen in clean tech is large enterprises are trying to optimize their utilization of all these resources and the outputs from their production processes, which are now costing them more and more. But it's costing them more because the outputs are being effectively taxed. They have to clean up their outputs, whether it's effluent into water streams, whether it's air emissions, whether it's CO2, which is certainly going to be a big driver in the future. And so while clean tech may be that broad, there's a handful of categories that have taken real dominance. Energy is probably the biggest one. Mm-hmm. And so within energy, we've looked at, and lots of the VCs around here have looked at distributed generation technologies, so things like solar.
Right.
And solar in itself is a broad category. It enables it encompasses a lot of technologies, from thin film to crystalline silicon to concentrated solar thermal. We've got a big company that just got awarded a large contract from PG&E to do solar thermal fields in the Mojave Desert. So that's pretty broad.
Right.
But coupled with that, you need large-scale energy storage devices. You need it for things like intermittent supply of energy to the grid, like wind and solar, requires better storage technologies. So that's another area that we're spending a lot of time on. there's been a lot of work in advanced fuels, and so
Right.
we're doing a lot in advanced fuels as well. So things like biodiesel, cellulosic ethanol, even traditional ethanol, which we're not doing a lot of, but certainly people are. And that's one area. But that also flows into other enabling technology for things like advanced batteries for plug-in hybrids, batteries for electric vehicles, which we're investing in.
Some people call it primary power versus secondary power. Is that?
Yeah, for batteries. So there's
Yeah.
primary batteries and secondary batteries. But
Okay.
what we're looking for is batteries that have higher discharge capacity, meaning they have higher power densities, and higher energy capacity, so they can store more. I mean, right now, gasoline is a very effective storage mechanism for energy, and batteries are not as effective. And so we need to go up the curve pretty quickly in order to have a truly usable electric vehicle, which I think long-term will be the end game for the auto sector. Outside of that, energy efficiency is a place that people are spending a lot of time on, and that's things like smart grid technologies, things like demand response, which enables grid operators to more effectively utilize existing resources already on the grid without creating more generating capacity. And so the VC community has been incredibly broad in their view of what they're doing in clean tech. We haven't touched upon wind, which has been one of the biggest growing areas in renewables, where there has been some VC investments and really good VC exits. And so I think we are, as a firm and as a whole class of investors, incredibly excited about what's happening and the types of technologies that we can invest in to advance that thesis, which was utilizing our existing resources more effectively.
So for DFJ, are you more taking a portfolio approach, investing in all these areas, or are you specializing in a particular?
That's a good question. We started out really looking for advanced materials applications within energy. And so we looked at thin film solar as being the first area that we thought would be interesting. We invested in a company called Konarka Technologies, which is printing solar cells on plastic and a high throughput manufacturing process. So very thin, very flexible, very cheap solar cells. And then from there we just started seeing a lot of other application areas. We've now made 28 investments in clean technology companies since 2002 when we made our first one. And then from there we've got a network of funds across the globe, which now are 18 funds. We've got over 60 portfolio companies in clean tech. And it's really gone broad across the sector. We've done 2 clean coal investments. We've done 2 electric vehicle companies, one being Tesla, which you probably know out here, and one being Reva, which is a low-end vehicle in India. We've done a bunch in biofuels. We've done a wind investment, a lot in solar, a lot in energy storage. And so I would say right now we focus, do a deep dive in a vertical, but we've been doing it so long that we're in a lot of the verticals already.
Okay, so beyond these energy technologies, are you involved in other clean tech technologies as well? For example, building materials, green living. I don't know, just as a random example, making floor using wine cork. Is that something that VCs invest in or not really?
No, they are. So the green buildings thesis is a great thesis. There's not been a lot of innovation in building products. It's traditionally not been an innovative industry at all. And there's been a handful of innovations little by little. That's a space, and clearly the drive towards a zero footprint home is a big thesis that everyone's taking. We have not made an investment in a green building company, but our partner fund, Element Partners, made 2 investments in green building products companies, and there's been a lot more emphasis on that. Particularly as you think about lower carbon intensity cement or cement replacement. Great application, particularly for places like China that's consuming so much in terms of the world's cement. They now consume about 40% of the world's cement, which is an incredible number. And so trying to lower the carbon intensity of the home, trying to decrease costs, trying to utilize less resources in building the house, so prefabricated structured products within homes. I think energy efficiency within a home makes a lot of sense as well. So there's a lot of players who are going from the meter to device, meaning all your devices should be smart.
Right.
And so during the times of peak load on the grid, you should be turning up your AC or turning down your heat, just decreasing your load. And if the grid can incorporate somehow pricing signals from the meter into the home to all these devices, then you've got a really smart, efficient home.
Right.
And so those are all the things that I think people are thinking about within clean tech.
Right.